hello to all of our listeners. I hope that you are enjoying your days, and thank you for taking the time to listen to our podcast. Today, we are going to be talking a bit about building a career here at OKT and the student experience. My name is Levi Marshall. I'm an associate at OKT. I currently live in Toronto, Ontario, but I'm originally from Nova Scotia. My home community is Membertou First Nation in Unama'ki, Cape Breton. I'm Ilnu or Mi'kmaq, but I grew up mostly out of my reserve in Halifax, especially Lower Sackville. And I've been in Toronto now for almost 10 years. So I've worked at OKT as a summer student, an articling student, and now as a first-year associate. If you are listening to this, chances are you know a little bit about us, about OKT, or perhaps you just know the basics, that we're a mid-sized firm based in Toronto and Yellowknife, and that we provide a variety of legal services to Indigenous clients throughout Canada on Aboriginal law matters. So today's discussion will hopefully give you some insight into what it can look like to build a career here at OKT, and we are going to be chatting with our CEO, Cathy Guirguis, who has worked at OKT for many years, who will share with us a little bit about what her professional journey and path has looked like here at OKT. We're also going to be discussing the student experience, and we're going to have the pleasure to hear from a few of OKT's students and first-year associates. OKT has opportunities for summer students, which are typically for students who are working their way through their law degree and for them to gain some practical experience during the summer months. OKT also takes on articling students for recent graduates who are working toward getting called to the bar and maybe completing their law society requirements. I feel very blessed to have been invited to be the moderator for this specific podcast episode. I think it's one that, and I'm hoping that our conversations today will help you get to know OKT just a little bit better. Someone who has been at OKT since the early days of this firm. Her name is Cathy Guirguis. She is the CEO and is a partner here at OKT. But she began her career with OKT as an articling student, then as an associate, working her way up to where she is now. Cathy is a member of the Ontario Bar and is listed as a consistently recommended lawyer in the Canadian Legal Expert Directory. Cathy has represented clients in applications and actions in Ontario and Manitoba, as well as in the federal court and at the Supreme Court of Canada. She has represented Indigenous clients in proceedings and tribunals in matters related to election processes, labor and employment issues, and environmental assessments. Cathy provides negotiation advice regarding Aboriginal treaty rights, land claims, and consultation. And she also advises clients on day-to-day employment matters and governance administration. And we're going to have the pleasure to hear from a few of OKT's students, Camille O'Sullivan and Aherthy Jeyasundaram. Camille went to law school on the West Coast and is now articling here in our Toronto office. And Aherthy has now spent 2 summers with us at OKT. So thank you for taking the time to speak with me, everyone. All right, so our first conversation will be with Cathy Guirguis, the CEO and is a partner here at OKT. So Cathy, thank you very much for taking some time out of your busy schedule to speak with us. I think that you are perhaps one of the best people to come in and share a little bit about your experience at OKT by telling us a little bit about how long you've been here at OKT and giving us a little overview of your career progression.
Sure. Thanks, Levi. Thanks for having me here today to talk about this. I started at OKT back in 2007 as an articling student, but I actually came to OKT even the summer before that, volunteering some time as a summer student, and then was brought on as articling student. And as you said, over then the past 18 years now, I have progressed from articling student to associate to partner. I am still a partner here, and also now taking on this new role as CEO.
So cool to hear about your journey. So how did you find your way to OKT and working for the firm at the beginning?
So I actually started off law school thinking that I wanted to work in international development. I was doing double degree in Master's Environmental Studies and my law degree at the same time, which was at Osgoode Hall. And I was really focused on international development. I had worked in a couple of other countries doing volunteer projects, and that was really my focus. When I got to law school, I think like many students, the experience was a bit jarring. I was coming off of completing the first part of my master's. Like I said, I did it together with law school, but the first part of my master's coming from working and completing an internship in Bangladesh. And I started off law school. It was a bit jarring, really didn't know what my focus would be. And it's a tough experience. First year law is a tough experience. Second year law, third year law, I'm sure the same thing. But as I got more into it, I was able to start focusing on courses that I was really interested in. And one of the things that I did at Osgood was the Indigenous Intensive Program. When I did it back in 2005, it was called the Aboriginal Intensive Program. And I did a placement with an organization called the Center for Indigenous Environmental Resources. And I really took to it. I really learned a lot about the history of this country and things that I had not been taught in a public school and as a settler here in this country. The child of immigrant parents, I hadn't really learned a lot of the history of this country, and it was really enlightening, and it was a really just to me, a really important thing to keep digging into. And so that really changed the focus of my law career at that point. What else happened during my time in that program is I met one of our current partners that is here, Lorraine Land. And she was working for this amazing firm that had just started in the year 2000 called Otheus Clear Township. She talked about it. It was basically, there was a celebration that was happening for the Indigenous Intensive Program at that time. It was an anniversary. And so she talked about her experience working there. I approached her at that time. I said, I'm really getting interested in this area of law. It really kind of connects with the purpose that I see for the law and what I want to be doing with the law. Do you have any openings there? I was doing some other volunteer work at another legal clinic, and I was also continuing to work for the Center for Indigenous Environmental Resources. So it really focused what I was doing in law school and also what I wanted to do with my career going forward. From there, applied as an articling student, got the position at OKT, and here I am 18 years later.
Amazing. So you also got into working here through Lorraine.
That's right. Yes, just like you, Levi.
Yes, I had the same experience. Lorraine was my professor. She's amazing.
So look at where you could be in 18 years.
Oh wow. Cathy, at the time when you were thinking about working in this area and learning more and more about it, were there many other Aboriginal law firms operating?
No, not really. I mean, there was maybe one other that I knew of in the Toronto area, but mostly we were seeing law firms out of BC doing this work. But this was really one of the only private law firms doing work in this space. And the practice looked very different than what it looks like today. When I started at OKT, there was a handful of partners, all of our named partners, plus one more, and then there was only a handful of associates, plus 2 assistants. So it looked very different. It was a very small firm, but it was what's always been at the center of what OKT does is that the dedication to the work that we are doing has remained the same throughout. But it was a very small firm, and there was not a lot of other law firms, particularly from Ontario and from Toronto, in the same space.
Yeah, wow. No, it's cool to get that information. To imagine what the space looked like then. And now, do you have an idea as to how many Aboriginal law firms there are running in this country?
You know what? That's a very good question. I actually don't know what the actual number would be throughout the country. I know that there's so many that are doing this kind of law, but maybe not exclusively. I know a lot more of the big law firms are doing some of this law as well. But I think we are one of the largest that is doing this work exclusively as a national law firm. But I'm not sure actually about that. That's probably something that we shouldn't. So let me leave it as that I don't know, Levi.
Okay, but there are a number of places that you can dip your toes into this type of work. Ours is, exclusively focused on these type of matters. So, and we operate throughout the entire country too.
We do, yeah. I mean, what's changed, we've always operated in various provinces through Canada. I think what's changed in terms of the growth that we've seen, we've become, of course, a lot larger than when I started. Like I said, it was just a handful of partners, handful of associates, but we've continued to grow since that time. So I started in 2007, with probably about 10 lawyers at that time total. And now here we are in 2025, coming up on the 25th anniversary of OKT. And I think we are over 50, approximately 50 lawyers and students now. So it's quite a bit of growth. We have the office in Toronto, we have the office in Yellowknife, Northwest Territories. So we are able to service a lot more of the clients and the demands and the need now with the firm that we have become.
Going back to your personal journey here, at what point did you realize that you wanted to work at OKT for the long term? Was it your first summer here, or was it when you were articling? Was there a moment for you?
Like, law for me was always a vehicle to, to push something forward, to do something positive. Why I kind of got into law was because I wanted to, I mean, it sounds very idealistic, I guess, when I put it this way, but I wanted to use it for some kind of social good or change. I think it can be a good tool for that. And so for me, when I learned about OKT, when I learned about, Aboriginal law, Indigenous rights law in law school, when I learned more about the history of this country, for me, it became a purpose-driven. For me, it was basically that law needs to serve some kind of purpose. And I wanted to find a place where that aligned with that, not just, another job. If I was going to be working as a lawyer, if I was going to be doing this job, if I was going to be working in law, then I wanted it to have a purpose behind it. And so when I started as a summer student volunteering here at OKT, so not really an official summer student, but when I started as a student volunteering here at OKT, I was convinced that what OKT does was aligned with what I wanted to be doing as a lawyer. As I got into articling, the same thing. And also I felt surrounded by people that I got along with, people that shared the same vision, but were open and understanding of the fact that, I was a young mother that I had a baby right before I started articling. So it was a very good environment for that. It was a supportive environment for what I was going through from a personal point of view, but also in terms of the work that I wanted to do. And so from there, I really never, then when I started as an associate, it kind of continued. I really never looked back. And I really never considered working in law outside of working in this area of law.
So there really wasn't a moment. It was just your entire experience here was positive. So that's what led you to want to stay here for longer.
Absolutely. And I think, I don't want to make it seem everything was perfect. Being a lawyer is difficult. Being an articling student is difficult. There's ups and downs. That exists at all law firms. And of course, it exists also at this law firm at OKT. At the time that I was an articling student, at the time I was a young associate, at the time right now that I'm the CEO and partner, there are ups and downs when it comes to working at a law firm. It's demanding. It's tough work. We are often in this area of law fighting very uphill battles that can be tough. But when you're working with people that have the same kind of drive, the same push towards the same kind of goals, the objectives, like that purpose-driven, committed to the same core values that you are, and I think that that's what we look for at OKT, is that we have our core values. Our 3 core values are about, advancing Indigenous sovereignty, however our clients defined it. It's about collegiality, and it's about excellence, doing excellent work for our clients and being an excellent place to work. When you're committed to those core values, and when you have people around you that are committed to those core values and doing what they need to live those values, to push that forward for our clients, then you get through those difficult times.
I think that was a very excellent point. I've heard so many times through little inspirational videos. I like to watch sometimes, when you have those rough days, if you have something and they say time and time again, if you have something where bigger to work towards, something that you feel like is touching on something that you really care about, even if it is a difficult day, it helps you get through it. And as you said, I've realized it, and I'm sure that the others have realized it as well. There are some tough days and busy days, and everyone experiences that in all jobs, not just in our job, but a lot in our job. We have a lot of those days. But when you have something that you're working towards that you care about, I think it definitely does. It definitely does make it easier, at least in my experience, and from what it sounds like yours as well. And I don't know how you all feel about that, but yeah, the same. So that's wonderful to hear. You mentioned this, when you came here at OKT, there were some of the same partners that are here today. Why do you think that there are so many people who have decided to stay at OKT for so long and stay here for the long game?
Well, I think that's really like going back to what I said about us being really aligned on those core values, right? So I think, yes, at its base is that I think you have a collection of people here that really believe in what they're doing, that they believe in using the law as a tool for achieving Indigenous sovereignty, pushing that forward in terms of however our clients define it. And so really being dedicated to that work. And it's a really good place to be able to do that, right? We believe in access to justice, so we try to make ourselves and our services very accessible to clients, to the First Nations that we serve. We work exclusively for First Nations and Indigenous groups. We're, working directly with First Nations in community, and so people are very committed to what they are doing and the job that they are doing. So they want to see it through. As you may know, these things, it's often uphill. It's also often a long game, right? So people are committed to working through issues that take a long time to resolve. So there's that aspect of it. I also think, I'm saying this as someone that's been here for 18 years, is that, and as we grow, as I think that what we've maintained is an atmosphere and a work environment that is friendly, that is collegial, that is respectful, and that is inviting for people to be a part of. I do think that. I think that, again, no one place is perfect. No workplace will be perfect in every single way, but I think we offer a comfortable environment and one that people feel supported in terms of being able to do this work, but also in terms of being able to, be themselves and enjoy their their workplace, their time with their colleagues, and so on. So I think a combination of that, I think, is what keeps people here. Has kept people here a long time. It's definitely, for my own part, that's why I'm here.
Those are all things that I've experienced as well, and that I can definitely say is 100% true. Such great people here, and especially as a junior lawyer that you need help working on and building skills on, there are always people who are willing to mentor you and to help you, and those have always been, people have been so helpful and willing to raise their hand to do that for you. So I think that's another thing to add to that. I have had conversations with my friends about our experiences, my experience here at OKT, as well as their experience at different law firms, not just in Toronto, but also through the country. Often we have some differences of experiences. And in your eyes, what do you think sets OKT apart from some of the other law firms that students might be looking at when they're searching for a place to work?
I think definitely our students probably can answer this in a more contemporary way, but I would hope that we are a workplace that is exactly as you've just talked about, talking about that supportive environment, and that people are able to kind of put their hands up and ask for help when they need to, that partners, associates are available to help students, to answer questions, to provide resources for them to learn, to grow, to try new things. And so I would hope that we are that place that does that. I know we try to foster that. We try to foster that openness, that hey, if you have a question, come and ask the question. We are resources to you as folks that have been doing this work and working in this field for a long time. We try to provide opportunities to come together in the office. We try to make sure that we have an amazing marketing and event staff that tries to put together events to bring people together, or does put together events to bring people together, opportunities to engage socially, but also to engage in opportunities to learn together. We try to host internal legal education seminars, opportunities to learn about what different partners are doing in their areas of practice. And finally, we're really trying to encourage and trying to move towards formalizing our students, especially our students as they come in, and younger associates to start working in specific practice areas. So that's something that we've been working on, is that as we grow and we become a bigger firm, we want to make sure that we're giving people the opportunity to learn different practice areas, and especially as the practice of Indigenous rights law has grown and changed in the past couple of decades. There's different growing areas of law. So we want to give people the opportunity to work in business law. We want to give people the opportunity to work in litigation, governance, lands and services, child welfare. So we're really trying to move towards, and that's something that we're working on right now, to try to roll out kind of formalizing these different groups so that people get different experience in those different groups, and hopefully come out as much more well-rounded lawyers with the excellent skills to be able to continue working in this space.
On your point there, you talked about you're trying to formalize these groups, these more formal groups, to kind of allow people the opportunity to dip their toes into different areas. I think in my experience that I've had over here at OKT over the last few years, you've always made it an environment where if we want to try out something, it's very easy to do, to reach out to HR. Can you maybe talk a little bit about that? How easy is it for for people to go and try out new areas?
So as a student, you come in and you probably don't know whether you want to be doing litigation or business or trusts or duty to consult and accommodate or anything like that. You want to be open to all of those experiences and getting that kind of different experience. What we try to do here is rather than it's just whatever comes to you and you have to take it. It's like that can be effective because a lot of things will come your way in terms of the research assignments and things like that. But we also try to implement some kind of structure with workflow. So when I talk about the formalizing the groups and having kind of more of a formal rotation, that's to come. That's part of, we've been working on, how do we continue to grow and how do we continue to make sure that we're training students and associates in a good way, that we're learning all of those skills. That's to come. And so we're working on how to formalize that. Right now, what we do is that we have, you mentioned HR, our human resource folks that are there to support our students, that are there to support our associates, and to help to make sure that they're getting the different kinds of work that they're looking for. So if you come in and you say, I really want to be working on a child welfare file, then we'll try to get a student a bit of work, assign some research or something to that child welfare file. If you are interested in some litigation, then definitely we're going to try to have you have some exposure to that kind of litigation. And so we have these people here to try to support, to make sure that that experience is there and available if you want to, for whatever you're looking to get.
That's amazing. I think a lot of people, will be happy to hear that little bit of information. Just knowing that as a student, you have the ability to ask, and you don't just deal with a bunch of stuff that comes at you. There is an element of that, like you said, but you also have the freedom to be able to express areas of interest. So I think that's valuable. But what about in terms of the type of work? that that is done by, not just students, but also more senior lawyers at the firm. How much of the work involves working in Indigenous in communities and working um, with communities directly?
I would say almost pretty much all of it is that, our main clients, we work for Indigenous communities, like I said, exclusively, and First Nations exclusively across the country. So we are, depending on what your practice area is. So let's say in my experience, I do mainly litigation and negotiation, as you said in your kind intro, of summarizing the experience that I've had. So I am typically working and representing my clients in court claims with respect to their Aboriginal and treaty rights, historical breaches, and things like that, and in negotiations around that too, around historic land claims. And so I'm working directly with the client and needing to, a lot of the times, for sure, being in community, meeting with community. Meeting with chief and council, that's how we get our instructions for sure, but also doing community updates, community engagement with respect to how we are getting direction in terms of how to proceed on those cases that are about their rights, their lands, their resources. So it's definitely a huge component of what we do here is about working directly with clients, working directly in community. And so that's certainly a lot of, as you become a more senior lawyer, or not even a senior, as you grow to like fourth, fifth year, that's going to be a big part of, most lawyers' work here.
Kind of jumping off of that question, how often would you say that lawyers are working interprovincially? Because we work across the country, but is that a typical experience for everyone, that they're working around the country and not just in Ontario?
It really depends. So it really depends on your practice and who your main clients are. Again, I could just speak from my experience. When I started off working at OKT, I mean, as a junior, as an articling student, as a junior associate, a lot of the time you're not necessarily going out and working in community, but you're working on different files. And again, I worked at a much smaller version of OKT. So it was a lot of how I got my work was, well, who needed help at that moment? So I was working for clients out in Labrador. I was working for clients in Manitoba. I was working for lots of clients in Ontario. And then throughout my career, that's really ebbed and flowed. There's still sometimes that I might do some work for clients out in Manitoba, but there was a time in my career, I think probably in my 6th or 7th year of practice, where I think I was in Manitoba every other week. The focus of my work just became in Manitoba with Manitoba clients. Then it really ebbs and flows. Now the majority of my work and my practice is in Ontario. So it really depends on where is the need, what's the type of work that you're trying to go after, and what are the skills that you're trying to develop. But really, it can be different for everyone. There are some partners here that have done their entire practice and have done all of their work working for one client in one region. It really depends. If you're working, let's say, in our business law group, like our corporate law group, that tends to be across the country, right? So it really depends on the kind of work that you're doing and also the stage in your career.
So this last question is kind of looking forward. It's a forward-looking question. And I'm wondering, where do you see OKT in the next 5 years, and in the next 10 years, maybe?
That's a very good question, Levi. It's a very difficult one to answer. But I think, I'm excited for where OKT will be in 5 years and 10 years. I don't know necessarily exactly what it's going to look like. I can tell you is that where we were 5 years ago to where we are today, we have seen growth. We continue to see growth. This area of the law is growing. The need is there. The demand is there. The types of law that we are doing and the ways that we are needing to be reactive to our clients' needs and their growing economic development, their growing jurisdiction, self-governance. We want to be in a place where we're still able to meet those demands, meet those needs, and do it in a way that, again, aligns with going back to our core values, advancing Indigenous self-determination, excellence, collegiality. So we want to do all of those things. So I suspect in the next 5 to 10 years, I mentioned about kind of we want to make sure that we're on track to make sure that we're continuing to build up our young lawyers through proper skills building, through kind of formalizing practice groups. I suspect that we'll see more of that into the future. I suspect that we'll continue with that focus. I suspect that we'll see, or I hope that we're going to continue to see some growth. I think, it's an exciting time to be to be at this firm and to be seeing, what we continue to do, and to be in a position to be able to do the work that we do, and also, continue attracting students and young lawyers to come and join and have a good experience if they're looking for it.
So exciting. Well, thank you very much, Cathy, for taking the time to come and speak with us today, and for sharing so much. I think that you've touched on a lot of things that people are going to be very excited about hearing, especially those who may be considering applying to work here one day. So thank you very much, Cathy. All right, up next, we're going to be chatting with some of OKT's students about the student experience. How about I let you share a bit about your background and where you're studying and studied?
Okay, hi, thanks. My name is Camille O'Sullivan. I'm a settler of Chinese, French, and Irish ancestry. I grew up in Ottawa, Ontario, but moved to Victoria, British Columbia about 10 years ago, almost now, and attended the University of Victoria. I did the joint degree program in Canadian Common Law and Indigenous Legal Orders. And I summered at OKT in 2023, and now I'm back as an articling student. And thanks for having me.
Hi everyone, my name's Aherthy. I live in Toronto. I'm also a settler. My parents are Tamil refugees. I just completed my second year at Osgoode Hall Law School at York University. This is my second summer being here at OKT. My last summer was after my first year, and I get to be here again after my second year.
I'll just go in and start asking some questions, and I may at some point also add in a few little tidbits from my perspective as a junior associate here. I also was a summer student and articling student as well, but I'll let you two do most of the talking. Okay, so I guess we'll start with what drew you to OKT in the first place?
Really cool and interesting people, very smart and talented. I also got the sense that they really were focusing on meaningful work, or what I found meaningful. And it really seemed like a place that aligned with my personal values about community building, decolonization, collegiality, supporting Indigenous sovereignty, things like that. So I think that's kind of what brought me here eventually, and the promise of northern work, working in the Yellowknife office, which I got to do a little bit in my first summer here. So that was great.
I learned about OKT during my first year at Osgoode, very similar to Camille, through lawyers from OKT being on campus at Osgoode. So I took a course called Rights and Reconciliation that was taught by two lawyers from OKT. One of them was Professor Lorraine Land, who's also the same professor that Cathy mentioned. I remember this course exposing me to the limitations of Canadian law and the ways that lawyers could advocate against those limitations, advocate for better, advocate for acknowledgement of Indigenous sovereignty. And I don't think I understood the weight of that until that class. So this was perhaps the first time as a law student that I felt really hopeful, and I just wanted to continue feeling hopeful, and that's what led me to OKT.
Oh, that's so cool. I feel like Lorraine has recruited so many, so many of the OKTers that we have today. So that's super cool to hear. Um, Yeah, and I think I'll just add that I think I had a very similar experience. I took the Rights and Reconciliation class at Osgood. I met Lorraine and met a few other partners at the firm and some more senior lawyers who came in and were guest speakers at Osgood. Um, but yeah, I really enjoyed the class, and I really liked the work that they were doing. Every lawyer had a different experience to share, so uh, it drew me to the work, and I knew I wanted to do work with communities, um, with Indigenous communities, but also communities that were close to home for me. So being here allowed me to work close to home, which is something that I would like to do and something that I wanted to do, even though I was living, you know, not in Nova Scotia. I was living out here in Toronto. It's awesome. It's cool. It's cool to hear everyone's stories about how they came here. Um, do you remember your first day, like for your first days? What was it like?
I remember feeling very stressed out because I had just come from British Columbia for the summer, and um, I had friends from my undergraduate degree who had articled at firms in Toronto, and I remember visiting them during their experiences and what that was like, and I was very nervous that, despite OKT's, you know, uh, attitude, I guess, that it would still be this very like formal in formal office environment. And when I showed up, it was the I don't want to say the opposite of that because it's still a place of work, but it was very well. Everyone was very friendly and welcoming and funny, and it put me at ease immediately. Just arriving here and meeting people in person just really, really put my guard down and made me feel very welcome.
I think it was the same for me. Had just finished my first year of law school, and I remember feeling like I don't know enough of the law to be at a law firm yet. But that feeling didn't last very long. I remember as soon as the elevator doors opened, my orientation buddy, which is someone who is assigned to be your friend on the first day, was already there, and they were so excited to see me, and we just sort of walked around the firm, and they introduced me to the other lawyers and the other staff, and everyone was so warm and kind. And we had the first few days to just sort of settle in and meet people and get used to the tech and how the firm operates before we were even assigned work. And when we started to get assignments, there was always a lawyer who would walk you through what you needed to do. And you felt really free asking as many questions as you needed to in order to make sure that you could do the job. And even after that call, like there were so many check-ins and so many opportunities to make sure that you felt comfortable and prepared being there. So I'm really grateful for that.
It's really great hearing both of your experiences on your first day. It looked very different for me. I started online, so but they still, they tried to make it as special as possible for us, even though we were online and I wasn't in Toronto at the time. They sent me, my laptop, my tech, and a little welcome package. So it was special, and definitely didn't get that, that same vibe, coming in, having somebody come up and give you a warm welcome. But they gave me a nice virtual warm welcome, so it was still something, and I was like in the midst of COVID, so yeah, but it was still great. So without getting into too much detail about the subject matter of the files and the work, but could you talk a little bit about both of you talk a little bit about the sorts of tasks or projects that you've been involved in here at OKT so far in your capacity as a student?
There's been a lot of work, like just thinking about it in preparation for this. There were so many things that I wrote down. One of the things that I thought was really interesting was working with the corporate law group and navigating the land back process and understanding the logistics and the agreements that need to be in place to formalize returning land to Indigenous nations. I've also had the opportunity to look through case law and sift through legislation and statutes and write research memos to support ongoing litigation. I've worked with the governance team to draft laws with communities, which involves a lot of back and forth with community members and a lot of meaningful engagement to make sure that what you're working on aligns with what the community needs. I've also had the opportunity to visit a community on their territory, which is something that's very special about being a student at OKT, and I think my favorite memory.
Yeah, I think I've also had over the articling period and the summer I was here, have had the opportunity to work in a wide variety of things, and I really kind of have valued that experience where it feels like folks at OKT are really making sure that I'm getting to try different things. Even though that process hasn't been formalized yet, as Cathy mentioned, they're in the process of doing that. I have done bylaw drafting, governance work, supporting communities in applying for funding for really necessary capital assets to run programs that they're taking on. I got to work on the drinking water class action my first summer here, which involved traveling through BC with a coworker, which was really interesting and wonderful. As I mentioned earlier, I had the opportunity to work out of the Yellowknife office for about 4 or 5 weeks in 2023, and I got to just experience life in Yellowknife and work on some of the projects coming out of the Northern office. We also got to go and attend the Dene National Assembly, which I think was kind of a very special circumstance and opportunity because it was happening very close to where we were. It was still an 8-hour drive, but it was really surreal being there and listening to everything that Dene leaders had to say. And so I really think I've had such a wide variety of opportunities to do different things and work on different projects here at OKT.
I think my experiences have been very similar to both of yours. I've got to work on files a lot in the East Coast, which I said that I wanted to do coming in to this space. I also have had the privilege of working on files that will be going on potentially for a number of years. So I've got to see files move at slower paces, and also files that work at faster paces. So that has been really, really nice, and very different experiences that I've got to learn from as well. I think that there's been a lot of research tasks. There have been opportunities for me to go to community, for me to do some work with clients face to face, which has been really nice, and also get to use some of my creative skills as well, as I did film and video before. So lots of opportunities here to dip your toes into different sorts of work. But I think, what does a typical day look like for you at OKT?
I think it ebbs and flows. I don't know that I have one typical type of day, though I try to, and I do look at a to-do list. I have an ongoing to-do list of tasks over the various files that I am part of, and see what is most urgent and try and address that first. And I make a plan for the day, and sometimes that works out, and sometimes it does not, and that's okay. I think, you know, though we are a larger firm, sometimes urgent research comes up and you might be the only person or one of the only students with capacity to take it on. So you do that and you jump ship into that project, not from the firm.
I think my days are very similar to what Camille is describing. You come in the morning and you have a lot of agency in how you decide you want to spend your day. You have a set list of things that you want to get done, and you have deadlines that you've discussed already with the lawyer, so you kind of work from that list. You tend to have questions that come up while you're working. And what's nice about OKT is that everyone kind of leaves their door open. So you can just walk into someone's office and be like, hey, I have this question, and go over what you're thinking and talk about how you feel about the assignment. And that has felt really normal to do here, which has made the work so much easier and so much more meaningful. Sometimes there's sporadic meetings throughout the days. Sometimes you're asked to participate in a meeting, or sometimes you're just there to observe or take notes. Often you're doing both. It's really exciting when you get to sit in on meetings, even if they're virtual meetings with clients and community members. I find that I get to do that a lot at OKT. And I think that's one of the best parts about being a student, is just the ability to, and the time to observe how other lawyers approach working with communities and working with their clients, and just seeing their different styles and how they navigate issues. I've learned a lot just from getting to witness that.
I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on the sorts of mentorship opportunities you've had here so far. What does that look like?
I think OKT really has a mind towards, like, it's embedded in the firm culture to ensure that, yes, they're doing good legal work, but they're teaching all the time. And I've found that there are both significant formal and informal structures for mentorship, or opportunities for mentorship, that so many lawyers pick up. So as a summer student, I had a mentor. As an articling student, I had you, Levi, as my articling buddy, which was such a relief, because I also, coming from British Columbia into the Ontario LSO process, was a little bit jarring for me. I needed to orient myself, and you were extremely helpful with that. And I really dearly appreciate you. And then I again have a mentor, Kevin Hill, and then my principal as well, and my assistant, who has been here for so long now and has pearls of wisdom to help guide me through as well. So there's all those people who are like formally set up. OKT makes sure you're formally set up with you as a student. But then there is this environment of collegiality that Cathy has talked about, and we've touched on before, that really truly exists here, where, yes, people leave their doors open. We have a very active Slack, and you can always ask questions or reach out, and I never feel like it's a burden or that it's, the wrong thing to do. It's very much encouraged. And when there are teaching moments, I find that the lawyers here take the step to reach out to the students and invite them in to experience those teaching moments. I had that happen in my first summer here. Maggie Wente brought a few of us in to observe an intake call on a file that we weren't going to continue working on, but just to hear and experience it. Joel Morales today brought us to the great library, like taking that time to show us around, show us what the resources are available to us, show us what something will look like. And I think that's really special about OKT, and it's emphasized here maybe more than what I've heard elsewhere. And it's definitely a strong culture here to teaching and mentorship.
What I'm interested in hearing is a little bit about the learning curve coming in, from law school to working in a law firm. Do you think you can talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. I felt that the classroom in law school prepares you with this foundational understanding of Canadian law. Sometimes that understanding is abstract. For example, you understand this specific doctrine or a legal test, and you know the steps of the test and how it could be applied. But the work at OKT for me has always felt like taking what I've learned about the Canadian legal framework and then considering if it should be applied to an Indigenous nation, given how unique Indigenous legal problems are. And if it is going to be applied, what would that look like and what would the outcomes of that be? So there's a lot of learning that you do on the job just at OKT, especially as a student that's not Indigenous. There's this constant acknowledgement of how much I don't know and being earnest in my attempt to understand and navigate the law in a way that makes sense for the Indigenous community. And that doesn't always reflect what I've learned at school. So there is this bridging between those two experiences. Both have been important, but it's been different.
I definitely relate to some of the points that you made, and I also another thing that I was thinking about as you were speaking is how in law school I wasn't taught to to prepare a certain document that when you come and work at a law firm you may be asked to prepare. Hopefully you're introduced to memo writing at some point in law school, but other things like factum writing or drafting an affidavit, or helping draft an affidavit, like some of those things I wasn't at least exposed to while I was in law school. Of course, I've seen them before, but actually getting to work on one and to help write, one of these documents, it wasn't something that I did. So I think that was definitely, part of my learning experience, being able to do the practical things that lawyers should be able to do. And what about the supports that you've received, though, as you continue to navigate this learning curve? How have you found the supports here at OKT for you?
I felt really supported. I don't think I can say that enough. Similar to you, I feel at law school, you only get a few chances to practice writing a memo at law school before you are working at a firm. But while at the firm, there are sessions on how to write a memo. So I get to learn it all over again and get to have the experience of other lawyers who have written countless memos to inform how I approach my writing. So there's been a lot of opportunities to continue learning. I've never felt alone in the work I'm doing because I feel the way OKT has approached it, it does feel like a team sport. So there's never really been a task where I was asked to do something and I didn't know how to do it and I didn't know who to speak with. I've always known exactly who I can go to for support, and that has been very comforting.
I totally agree. I feel like I had said earlier in my conversation with Cathy, and I really meant it, if you are working on something and you have a question, you feel comfortable to openly communicate that question or to ask someone. And even if it's not the lawyer you're directly working with, everybody is so friendly that you can just go knock at somebody else's door and ask for help as well. So there is definitely an environment here where you don't feel worried as an associate or as a student talking to a partner or to a more senior lawyer. It definitely feels like a really nice environment that way, When I think back to when I was in law school after coming from a summer at OKT, going back and feeling like, oh wow, I've actually, learned some things this summer, and I felt in class when they were talking about certain subjects, I'm like, oh, okay, I know what they're talking about here, before I did a reading on it, or before I really delved into the material on it. Can you talk a little bit about the types of skills that you feel like you've developed most since starting here?
I think there's the hard skills that you develop. Like, I think I've learned how to be better with memo writing. I've learned how to do legal research better. I've learned like which platforms I like using, Westlaw and Lexis Plus and Hein Online, and how to really navigate those systems. But then there's also like the larger things that I've learned. So for me, one of them is I think I've become better at telling a story that's compelling and honest. And I think that's a really big part of being a lawyer. So with every task I'm given, I'm really conscious of what part of the story I'm joining at, the thread that the lawyer has already sort of weaved, and me sort of continuing on that thread, and how this story will now be received by the Indigenous community that I'm working for. So I'm hoping that I've become better at being a storyteller. And I think another thing that is important to me, and I felt important to the work I'm doing at this firm, is just I've learned to be a good friend. I think being a good friend to the lawyers I'm working with and the staff that work here, and most importantly, knowing how to be a good friend to the communities I'm working with.
I feel that. No, I feel like that's a great answer. I loved the image you were creating with the storybook there. I feel like, it definitely is. There's such a huge creative element to being a lawyer, and to a lot of the tasks that we do. As someone who did creative work before coming into to practice law, I definitely feel that. So for all those listening, that it is a thing. um, uh, but I feel like one thing that when I think back to my experiences so far, with the projects that I've got to work on, and the people I've got to work with, I think one of the skills that I've developed the most since working here, is learning how to communicate sometimes very complicated principles, sometimes very complicated areas of the law, and to do so in a simple way that is, easily understood by people who don't study law. And I think that that's such an important skill, especially in our area of work. We're working with communities and First Nation communities, and a lot of the work that we're doing, has to also be communicated to them as well. And so that was a skill that I definitely feel like wasn't taught to me in law school, and that I'm learning now. A lot of the stuff you learn in law school is very complicated, is super difficult to understand, and takes a lot to wrap your head around. So being able to go back and explain these concepts simply, I think also has helped me also have a more of an understanding of these concepts as well, and has made them more concrete in my head. So I think that that has definitely been one of the skills that I've been working on the most since starting here. I guess we'll move on to the final question. Do you have any advice for students applying to this firm or preparing for their first legal job in general?
I think the advice I would give to someone who's applying for their first law job would be to just be open. What I understood as like the archetype of a lawyer has changed drastically since I've started law school to since like working at OKT. I think a lawyer is someone who is kind and open and someone who works with their clients really well and is able to build meaningful relationships that can last decades. And I think also being open to more than one area of practice. I think you come into law school thinking this is exactly the area of law that I want to be in. And even being at OKT, I've realized that I really like working in the governance group and I like working in the corporate law group. And I think just being open to changing and evolving with what you're exposed to, and just kind of being accepting of that tide has been really helpful and comforting to me.
I think that's a really great response. When I think back to starting at OKT and starting here as a summer student, I think I was sometimes, hesitant to ask questions, and I would go down rabbit holes, just, Google searching things. What does this mean? What does that mean? And going back to my legal textbooks and trying to figure out and navigate different tasks that I had that I was working on. But I think the piece of advice I would give is just to ask questions to your colleagues. And I think at that point as well, I was starting online, so it was a little bit more intimidating. You don't have the same sense of everybody and of your colleagues when you have a screen as a barrier between you both. But there are so many times that I can think of where it would have just been way faster, and I probably would have gotten way more out of it if I had just sent a message or an email to someone asking them about something, and I'm sure they would have taken the time to get on a Zoom call with me and talk it through, and also you develop more connections with people. So I think just ask more questions and don't worry about feeling like looking stupid, or don't worry about that. Everyone is more than willing and more than happy most of the time to talk with students and to talk with young lawyers who are just figuring things out. So people also love to talk and chat. So I think that people would be more than happy if you ask them. So that'd be my piece of advice, I think. All right. Thank you very much, Camille, Aherthy, Cathy, and thank you all for taking the time to speak with the listeners and for sharing a bit about your experiences here at OKT as a summer student and also as a lawyer here. So I think that the insights that everyone has shared today have been super valuable. And this is a conversation that I wish I had the privilege of listening to before I started here at OKT. To our listeners, thank you for taking the time to listen to the podcast, and we appreciate your support. If you're interested in learning more about OKT or interested in applying here one day, be sure to check out our website and follow us on social media for instructions on how to apply and to keep posted about the sorts of opportunities that are available here. As well, throughout the year, OKT hosts open houses to give students a chance to visit our space, to meet our lawyers, and to learn more about the work that we do. So if you're interested in receiving an invitation to a future event, you can reach out to the following email, and that is events@oktlaw.com. That is events@oktlaw.com. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.